Hey, hi everyone, welcome back. So, guys, as part of the today's session, let us see a small and an interesting concept, which is the various timeouts that we have in a playwright. So, the first timeout that we have is a global timeout. There's a global timeout is applicable for the entire test to run, and there is a no default value for that. And the next one is a test timeout. This is the time limit for a specific test that it's been executing, and the default timeout value is 30,000 milliseconds. And the next one is an action timeout. Basically, in order to perform an actions like filling a value into a text field, clicking on any button, getting a text from any particular element for all those actions. Of course, there is no default timeout for that. And the next one is a navigation timeout. Consider that you are opening an application, how much time it needs to take, and there is a no default timeout value for that. And the next one is a verifying something, and the maximum timeout value by default it has is an 5000 milliseconds. Okay, perfectly all right. Consider that a small situation. I have a defined a global timeout as 2 minutes, and it's taking more than that time to continue to finish my execution. What it will happen means if your suit is taking more than 2 minutes to complete the execution, then the test will be terminated based on the timeout whatever we have defined in the global timeout. That's perfectly all right. And another thing that we need to consider here is action timeout, whatever we have, it's cannot be longer than the test timeout, and even this test timeout cannot be longer than the global timeout as well. Okay, this cannot be longer than as a global timeout as well. Perfectly all right. And then the next thing that we need to consider out over there is this navigation timeout and an action timeout. We can define these two as part of a configuration file under the use itself. Under the user here, you will be defining the action timeout. Maybe I'm giving it as a 4000 milliseconds. And I can also give my navigation timeout as a 4000 milliseconds too. Whereas the global timeout, I can define just below this particular one, which is a global timeout 1,20,000, something like that. I have defined this particular value. Like this, we can define this particular timeouts, guys. Okay, like this, we can define this particular timeouts. Perfectly all right. And consider that I just want to define a timeout for my click command. Okay, I just want to consider a timeout for my click command. So not only from that particular configuration file, we can also define those we can also define those timeouts from here. See here, auto waiting 5. And here, what I am doing right now here is for this particular click, I can give my timeout value. Okay, I can give my timeout value. Of course, we need to put it here in this braces, and the timeout for this particular one here is around 20,000 milliseconds. So for this particular command, this is what the timeout that we are setting it up. And moreover, not only this one, we can also set the timeout for a particular test here. Okay, we can also set a timeout for a particular test like this. Okay, it's up to you depending on your requirement. You can set a timeout for your test as well. Okay, as it is the timeout that we have already defined, you can directly define the value here. Okay, this is gonna define in this particular way. So this is the way how exactly we can define this particular timeouts in the real world whenever we are working on our projects. Okay, perfectly all right. And another thing out over here is consider that you don't have all these timeouts. Still, you just wanna slow down your test script execution. Only this particular test itself, I just wanna slow down. So what I can do, so here we can use a test.slow. What it's gonna does basically, whatever the timeout value is there, it's gonna perform three times of a timeout value. Okay, for this test. So consider that if you have a 5000 there as a default timeout that you have defined, so three times it's gonna be for this particular test, it will be waiting for 15 seconds. Okay, for this time it's gonna be waiting for 15 seconds. Okay, perfectly all right. So these are the various timeouts that we have, guys. Okay, as part of the next session, we will be continuing with further examples. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.